When it comes to top performing UFC fighters, when it comes to fighters that are at the peak of their game, not heavyweights, all of them will probably tell you that nutrition is incredibly important to their performance, to their routine, to being able to train hard, all of these type of things. But fighters differ vastly in the type of diets that they follow in order to be able to perform at their optimal level. And so today we're going to be exploring some of the best fighters the UFC has to offer and the different diets that they actually follow. But before I get into it, if you wouldn't mind, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Helps with the YouTube algorithm, helps grow the channel. So the first one we're going to be looking at is vegan, right? A lot of people think, and a lot of people who've gone through the sort of vegan thing find that it's super low energy for them, right? My sister was a vegan for a really long time, and she always found like she was super low energy. But I have heard that you can do it really well if you get the correct sources of protein and, you know, supplements and all these other kind of things. I don't really know. But the bottom line is there are a couple fighters that subscribe to being vegan. One of them is Nate Diaz. He had quite a bit of success in his prime in the UFC, and he is to this day a vegan. And another one that's on the map right now is Ian Gary, who is, you know, one of the top contenders in the welterweight division. Now, whether or not this is the best diet for a fighter, who knows? But these would probably be the two top names in the UFC at the highest level of combat sports who subscribe to the veganism dietary style. And it is hard to ignore when you have someone who's getting close and basically just fought for a #1 contenders match who subscribes to this and says it doesn't impact his strength, his performance, his power, any of those type of things. So those are the representatives of veganism. Next, we've got Paleo. Paleo is a dietary style where basically you're supposed to kind of like go back to the roots of your ancestors and just like eat all the stuff that they would have eaten. So like nuts, berries, fruits, vegetables, anything you can kind of kill or grab that you don't have to actually bake or make in order to, you know, have the best type of diet. And a guy who subscribes to that diet was actually a UFC world champion, Leon Edwards. He is a big proponent of the paleo diet style. He made it all the way to the top of the welterweight division, and he was saying that this gives him lots and lots of energy. This is one of the things that he subscribed to, and he's probably the best representative of the paleo diet. Halal, the halal diet. Now, for those of you who don't know, halal isn't necessarily like a diet. It's more like a way of eating and treatment of certain types of animals. So for example, the fighters that follow halal diet, like they don't eat pork, and when they eat meat, it has to be slaughtered in a specific way. But some fighters that subscribe to the halal way of eating are people like Bilal Muhammad, Islam Makhachev, and Hamzat Chimaev. A lot of them, all the Muslim fighters eat in a halal way. And so they're avoiding things like alcohol. They are not consuming pork, which is considered, some are saying, is like the most cancer-causing meat of them all. And, you know, they fast during the month of Ramadan, and that is kind of what they do. And so this dietary style of eating, the halal style, has a lot of people who are at the highest levels of the division. Now, is it because they eat halal only that they're at the top? No. They say a lot of the time it's because they're disciplined, it's because of their lifestyle, it's because they don't party, it's because they don't drink, it's because they don't gamble. They are at the top because they don't really do anything other than eat, sleep, and train, right? As Islam Makhachev says, I eaty, I sleepy, I trainy, right? So that's that situation. Israel Adesanya is an example of someone who follows a balanced diet. He eats a little bit of everything. He does what he has to do in order to maintain his levels of energy. He's saying that the balanced diet is the right diet for him. And he's gone on to be one of the greatest middleweights that we have ever seen. Now, not only is he a representative of a balanced diet, but there are a lot of other fighters that follow suit, right? I believe Kamaru Usman talks about this a little bit as well. And Francis Ngannou also talks about that and how his nutrition levels are incredibly important to his success. And they are probably some fantastic representatives of balanced diet styles and these type of things. And then we move on to Carnivore. There aren't too many fighters that say that they subscribe to Carnivore. However, Michael Chandler has said he has tried it during his training camp. He's like, I didn't want to play around with it a bit too much in training camp because I wanted to make sure I make the weight and all these other kind of things. But he did say he had lots of energy and power, and he had something that he wants to look into continuing and pursuing in future years to come. Now, I am not a nutritionist. I'm hoping I'm going to have one, the MMA dietitian, on this channel at some point in time so that she can talk me through all the nutritional things that she looks at in order to determine what's going to be the best thing for a fighter. But my question to all of you is, who do you think has the edge, if there is any, from a dietary perspective? Right? I think obviously the biggest disadvantage, and again, this is just from the people I know who've tried it. I tried it once, is the vegan one, right? Because you are missing out on that protein. It's really hard to get the fat that you need, that's necessary. I find that you eat a lot of carbs when you're in the sort of vegan diet, right? And you're missing out on some of those essential things. Whenever I tried it, I did feel very low energy and very tired all the time. My sister, she said the exact same thing. Now again, the people at the highest levels like Nate Diaz and Ian Gary, maybe they've got a nutritionist and we know the situation. Ian Gary is hired and living with his nutritionist. But at the end of the day, maybe they've got it down to a science where they can feel that good level of energy, right? But I feel like the biggest disadvantage to that is you've got to be so much more careful and so much more on top of your whole situation. I think paleo is a fairly balanced diet, but you're missing out on, basically all the stuff that people say you should stay away from anyway, right? Everybody across the board always says okay, whole foods, stay away from heavily processed things, whatever. And paleo is exactly that, right? Anything you can kind of pick up or kill or whatever and just eat right away, that's kind of what you should stick to. And I think there's something to that, right? Just grabbing some nuts, a handful of berries, these type of things. Although it might make it a little bit more inconvenient to get the nutrients that you need in that sense, because you're not having anything that's processed. Some of those things can be super convenient, especially if it's a scenario where you're you're at the gym, you can't come home, you can't cook, you don't have the time, all these type of things. And of course, they have all that kind of stuff, at the UFC PI. But Leon Edwards, for example, he lives in England, so I don't know what would happen there. Balance, once again, very easy to kind of come by. Israel Adesanya, big proponent of that. I think that's probably the simplest style to follow, right? Just because it's not as difficult. There's so much things that are readily available. And of course he's at a level where he could probably have people making these things for him. But there's not a lot of different things that you have to do in order to keep your energy levels up. The other one that I would think would be a challenge would be carnivore, right? If you're doing the carnivore diet, again, as a fighter, just having things that fall into that sort of carnivore style, having eggs on you all the time, having meat on you all the time in order to eat it if you get hungry or need snacks or whatever the case may be, just to keep those energy levels up. And the other thing too that I would think that would be a challenge is if you need some fast acting things to give you energy. Usually, from what I hear, again, I'm no dietitian, but fats and the proteins and things like that, they take a lot longer to turn into energy and those type of things. So when you're in training and things like that, it might be hard to do that. So these are just some dietary things. This is what I have heard. I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you think any particular diet gives anybody an edge, or is that sort of a minor detail compared to all the other things that fighters do in order to give themselves an advantage? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.